So, what if I told you that our entire understanding of mental illness might be built on a 4,000-year-old mistake? It's a pretty wild thought, right? Well, that's the radical idea at the heart of the book we're breaking down today, An Amazing Journey into the Psychotic Mind. This thing challenges the very foundation of modern psychiatry, and we're about to see exactly how. The book we're exploring doesn't just call schizophrenia a disease. No, it paints this picture of something way more sinister, like a malevolent, mysterious force. It claims this affliction has been stalking humanity for millennia, just leaving this trail of devastation everywhere it goes. And the scale of what the book calls this human carnage, it's just staggering. I mean, get this. It claims this one illness hits 23 million people worldwide every single year. That's a global crisis, no matter how you slice it.
Okay, so how did we even get to our current understanding? Well, the book argues that the search for a cause has been this ancient mystery. And the big claim is that we've been coming at it from completely the wrong angle for literally thousands of years.
So the book lays out this 4,000-year timeline to make one single crucial point. From ancient Egypt all the way to modern psychiatry, the hump has always been for a physical cause, right? But here's the kicker. According to the book, that search has turned up absolutely nothing, zilch. And that leads to the central pillar of its entire argument. What if that foundational assumption, that the cause has to be physical, is just wrong?
And according to the book, this one flawed assumption didn't just lead to a dead end. Oh no, it led to a history of some really brutal, desperate, and ultimately failed attempts to find a physical cure.
The book's chronicle of so-called treatments kicks off way back in prehistoric times. We're talking about stuff like trepanning. And yeah, that's literally boring holes into a person's skull, supposedly to, let out the madness.
Fast forward to the 1800s, and you'd hope things got a little more sophisticated. But not really. The book points to things like the spinning chair. Its whole purpose was just to violently spin patients until they were too dizzy and sick to cause any trouble.
And it just gets worse. By the 1930s, what the book basically calls physical assaults, they just escalated. You had hydrotherapy, which meant strapping patients into tubs for days at a time, or even mummifying them in towels soaked in ice water.
Then came electricity. The book talks about electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT. This is where they'd send 450 volts of electricity through the brain to cause a seizure. And the result? It left patients dazed and lethargic, which, and this is the shocking part, was actually considered a success. And that brings us to the lobotomy. The book highlights this procedure where from the 30s all the way to the 50s, a tool, and sometimes it was basically an ice pick, was driven up through the eye socket to just scramble the brain's frontal lobe. It essentially turned patients into permanent zombies. So here's the crucial point the author is making. This whole horrifying history, it isn't just a list of medical failures. He presents it as direct proof of a fundamental error in thinking, this desperate, violent search for physical cause that, he argues, was never even there to begin with. All right, so that brings us to the present day. The book argues that, okay, maybe the methods are less visibly brutal now, but that same flawed assumption is still around, and it's powering a massive pharmaceutical industry.
The modern explanation, and I'm sure you've heard this one, is the chemical imbalance theory. It's the idea that mental illness is all caused by, faulty brain chemistry.
And according to the book, this one theory became the foundation for a huge industry. We're talking over $11 billion a year in antipsychotic drug sales. And get this, the book points out that drug companies spend almost twice as much on marketing the pills as they do on actually researching and developing them. And all of this leads to probably the book's most explosive claim about the modern era, that the chemical imbalance theory wasn't a scientific discovery, not at all. Instead, it argues it was a marketing scheme, pure and simple, created to sell a whole new class of drugs. Now, to back this up, the book cites this absolutely stunning quote from Dr. Ronald Pies, who's a professor of psychiatry. He called the whole chemical imbalance idea an urban legend and said it was never a theory seriously propounded by well-informed psychiatrists. I mean, wow. The book presents this as the exact moment the official story just starts to completely fall apart. So naturally, this raises a massive question, and it's the real turning point in the book. If the official explanation we've all been told is just an urban legend, then what in the world have we been missing all this time?
And this, right here, is where the book finally gives us its own answer. It's a theory that it presents as a startling, brand new clue in this very old mystery. Okay, so let's put the two conflicting views side by side. On one hand, you've got the official story. The voices people hear are internal hallucinations. They're just a symptom of a malfunctioning brain. But the book's theory? It's radically different. It proposes these voices aren't internal at all. They're from real external entities, actual beings that are totally separate from the person.
All right, let's really break down the book's core claims here. First up, it says the voices people hear are not their own thoughts. Second, they come from unseen, non-physical entities. Third, these beings are parasitic. They actually feed on the victim's energy. And finally, and this is key, they generate that food, that energy, by constantly hitting the person with negative thoughts. The book even links this wild idea to ancient Gnostic texts that talked about similar parasitic beings they called archons.
Now, the author doesn't just pull this out of thin air. He says he grounds these extraordinary claims in his own experience. 35 years of what he describes as direct, hands-on clinical work with patients in state prisons and mental hospitals. So really, at the end of the day, this book is a direct challenge to every single one of its readers. It's asking us to put aside the established medical model for a minute and seriously consider an explanation that, let's be honest, sounds a lot more like ancient mysticism than it does modern science. And it all boils down to this one final, really provocative thought, one that just flips the entire paradigm on its head. What if the voices we've always been taught to dismiss as just a symptom of madness aren't the symptom at all? What if they're actually the source of the illness itself?